Przewalski horses, the last wild horses on Earth. Last seen in the wild in 1968, these animals have only survived in Western zoos. For the last 10 years, a herd of Przewalski horses have been raised under unique conditions in southern France, under the watchful eye of a Swiss horse specialist. Her plan is to release a number of the herd in Western Mongolia, to help create a new population, to reverse the extinction of this fragile species. It's early May, and Claudia has travelled to Hovd in Western Mongolia to begin final preparations. For most of the 20th century, Mongolia was a satellite state of the Soviet Union. But since the fall of communism in the early 1990s, the country has made the painful transition to a market economy. Hovd is the last place to buy supplies before heading into the country's vast interior. It will take Claudia and her team 2 days to reach the release site, 300 kilometers from here.
When I start to feel really happy is once we are out in the countryside. I always look forward to come to Mongolia because it's a country that I like very much. I love its landscape. And this region, especially the western region of Mongolia and the national park, I mean, it's one of the biggest Central Asian wetlands. Plenty of wildlife, mainly birds around.
In 1998, Claudia chose a release site in the Komintal, a remote area of around 2,500 square kilometers that sits on the northern edge of the Gobi Desert. Her love of the flora and fauna here inspired Claudia to protect this unique habitat by setting up an integrated conservation project. She is appealing to Mongolians' passion for horses, considered sacred animals, to inspire local people to embrace conservation.
Horses as a flagship species make it easier to make people understand about more general issues of conservation. The horse is something real and something they like, so if you like things, you want to protect them. So it makes it easier to explain to them why you can't protect species without protecting habitats, in fact.
Local knowledge of living and working with horses could also be invaluable for research. After 2 days, Claudia arrives at the site where the horses will be released in September. She has secured exclusive grazing rights here for an area of 13,000 hectares. To provide a secure environment for the new arrivals, her Mongolian team have spent the last few months building and maintaining a fence around the entire site.
I feel quite horrible to put a fence up in Mongolian landscape because one of the beautiful things about Mongolia is there are no fences. But there was no other way. The fence is not just to keep domestic animals out, not to intervene with the Przewalski horses. The fence is a part of a habitat protection project. The major threat to this habitat was overgrazing, so the only way to stop this is to keep the domestic animals out. And it works well. Grazing pressure now is probably down to 1% of what it was before.
If Przewalski horses are to roam freely here one day, the problem of overgrazing needs to be solved throughout the Komintal. Under communism, all herds were state-owned and animal numbers were strictly controlled. When communism collapsed, herds were privatized and quickly expanded. To make matters worse, many Mongolians who had worked in state factories were forced to turn to traditional nomadic herding to survive. The number of herds increased dramatically, with devastating consequences. There's no shortage of volunteers to help load the crates onto trucks for the final leg of their journey, an hour-long drive to the release site. After nearly 2 days of travel and more than 10 years of preparation, the first horses are blessed and then released into their new home.
When we release the horses, they look lost, but they've started to graze very fast. They know it's grass, so let's try. Otherwise, they're roaming around. But the most important thing is that they start to graze and they start to drink, and they slowly, they'll learn about their new environment.
For the people who live here, this is a symbolic day, the return of sacred wild horses to Western Mongolia.